Subscribe to my YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts. The man in the scrubs wasn't human. Camilla's scream was hoarse by the time the nurses found her, not that they believed her. The CCTV showed nothing, no one entering her room, no one touching her IV, just her, thrashing on the hospital bed at 2:43 a.m., eyes wide, sobbing, screaming one word over and over again. He's not human. He's not human. But what had she seen? Camila Ruiz, 27, had been admitted after a minor car crash. Nothing serious. A concussion, fractured wrist, some bruised ribs. She should have been discharged in 3 days. On the second night, she woke up to the sound of breathing. Not hers. Something heavy, wet, animalistic. A wheezing rasp that came in slow, deliberate intervals. She opened her eyes, expecting to see her roommate in the next bed. But her roommate had been discharged that afternoon. Camilla was alone. The sound was coming from the far corner of the room near the door. She tried to sit up but winced at the pain in her ribs. Instead, she shifted slightly and stared through the dimness. The hospital had a rule: no full darkness, ever. So a faint yellow light bled in from the corridor through the crack in the door. That's when she saw him. At first, just the outline. Tall, lean, wearing scrubs. His back was turned. He stood unnaturally still, like someone frozen mid-step. No clipboard, no ID badge, just long arms, a hunched back, and a bald scalp that gleamed dully in the half-light. Camilla whispered, "Hello?" Her voice cracked. The man didn't move. She reached for the call button beside her pillow, but her hand stopped mid-air. He turned around. His eyes were too wide, bulging, lidless. His skin looked pulled tight, like it had been stretched over the wrong skull. The mouth opened, but didn't move right, like it wasn't made to form human shapes. He took a step forward, and that's when she saw it, his feet, bare, covered in dried blood. Her IV beeped loudly as her heart rate skyrocketed. She mashed the call button with her elbow. The lights flickered. Once, twice. And when they came back on, he was gone. By the time the nurse arrived, Camilla was shaking so badly she couldn't speak. A psych eval was ordered. The doctors whispered terms like post-traumatic hallucinations and ICU delirium. She wasn't even in the ICU. They moved her to a different room with security cameras, left the lights brighter, prescribed sleeping meds. But the next night, it happened again. 38 a.m. The lights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed as though something were draining the electricity. The machines stuttered. Camilla opened her eyes, the same breathing, closer this time, right beside her bed. She didn't look immediately. She closed her eyes tighter, as if that would erase him. She felt something cold and wet press against her hand. A moment passed before she dared glance sideways. He was inches from her face. Not just a man. Something that looked like a man. Its eyes were white now, clouded over, skin purple-grey. It wore scrubs, yes, but the name badge was upside down. The face twitched, like it was trying to remember how to smile. Its mouth opened again, too wide. And this time, a voice came. Out. Not a human voice. It sounded like two people speaking at once, one high-pitched, one deep and rumbling. "You shouldn't have survived." Camilla jerked back, pulling at the IV, ripping it out. Blood sprayed across the sheets. The door flew open. The lights returned. He was gone. The footage showed nothing. Doctors now considered her a risk to herself. She was sedated and moved to psychiatric observation, but the truth had already started unraveling. Camilla's sister, Beatrice, arrived the next morning and demanded to see her. The nurses were hesitant. "She's confused. Not herself. Hallucinating." But when Beatrice spoke to Camilla alone, her sister gripped her hand so hard it turned white. Camilla whispered, "Go to the morgue, please. Ask if anyone's died in room 413. Beatrice hesitated. "Why that room?" Camilla's eyes filled with tears. That's where I keep seeing him. I think he's not new." Later that day, Beatrice asked quietly at the nurse's station. The nurse looked up, startled. "Room 413? She glanced at the head nurse, who quickly waved her off. "It's nothing," the head nurse said firmly. "Old rumors, urban legend nonsense. That room's just old. Power flickers sometimes. We rotate patients out fast, that's all." Beatrice didn't buy it. She did her own digging. 3 hours later, she sat outside the hospital with her laptop, pale as paper. In 1998, a young resident, Dr. Javier Menendez, had died in room 413. Suicide. He had worked triple shifts, slept there sometimes. Then one night, he injected himself with a cocktail of drugs and bled out on the floor. They found his body 3 days later. The kicker? No one had filed the incident for 72 hours. It was almost as if people thought he had been walking around. That night, Beatrice snuck back into the hospital. Camilla was under heavy sedation, so she wouldn't remember much, but the camera on Beatrice's phone recorded everything. She sat in a chair beside her sister, whispering soothing words. Midnight passed. At exactly 2:43 a.m., the temperature dropped. Beatrice's breath misted. A soft wheezing sound began, the sound of breathing, wet and slow. The lights dimmed. Beatrice looked up, phone shaking in her hand. The camera caught it, a figure in scrubs standing just outside the door. Still, watching. Then, the door creaked open, but no one touched it. The figure stepped inside. Beatrice turned and for the first time truly saw what her sister had been describing. It wasn't a man. It wasn't anything that should walk. The body was stitched together, barely holding form. The face sagged on one side, the eye on the left dangling just below its socket. Its arms were too long, one dragging a rusted scalpel. Beatrice tried to scream, but the thing raised one finger to its lips, and she froze in place. Her phone slipped from her hand. The last thing the video captured before blacking out was a hand reaching toward her sister's IV line. Camilla woke up alone again. Beatrice was gone. No one remembered her being there. The phone, recovered by security, but wiped clean. Camilla demanded to see footage. Cameras were down for maintenance. She screamed, she raged, she tried to tell them, but they sedated her again. 1 week later, Camilla Ruiz was discharged. She didn't speak a word as she left the building. Her eyes were dull, her gait unsteady. Beatrice was never found. Just one strange detail reported by the night shift guard. At exactly 2:43 a.m. on the night Camilla left, he passed by room 413 and saw 2 people standing inside. One was a tall man in scrubs. The other was a young woman. Holding his hand, both turned to look at the guard at the same time. Their faces were wrong. The last patient in room 9A. They found him curled under the sink, muttering numbers. Nurse Marla Hayes had worked the psych wing at St. Sebastian's for over 11 years, and she'd never seen anything like it. She'd gone in for a standard morning check on room 9A. The patient had checked in just 2 nights. Prior, 54-year-old Glenn Atwater, anxiety issues, possible sleep disorder, referred after an apparent nervous breakdown during a routine procedure. But this was no panic attack. Marla had opened the door and immediately noticed something. Off. All the medical equipment had been unplugged. Glenn had torn the EKG pads off his chest, ripped his hospital gown nearly in half, and stacked the pillows up into a circle on the floor. Inside the circle were dozens of numbers, scratched onto paper towels, napkins, even the white walls in. Pencil 9A 421 1306. No blood on the mirror. He sees when I blink. 42 bar 2 421 421 421 421. He sat under the sink, rocking back and forth, whispering, "Don't look at the mirror. Don't look at the mirror. Don't look at the mirror." Marla called security. Glenn was sedated and transferred to the observation floor, but by then, the damage was already done. 3 days earlier, Glenn had been admitted for routine monitoring. His vitals had been erratic, mild arrhythmia, nothing life-threatening. The sleep specialist at his clinic noted Glenn had started talking in his sleep. Full conversations, sometimes arguments, but claimed he never remembered anything. That first night in room 9A, Glenn didn't sleep at all. The nurse's log noted he'd pressed the call button at 1:13 a.m., asking if the hallway mirror could be covered. "The what?" she'd asked. "The one by the med cart," Glenn said. "It's angled. I can see into it from my bed." The nurse chuckled. "We don't usually cover mirrors." Glenn replied, dead serious. "I saw something else in it." The mirror outside room 9A had been there for decades. A convex hallway mirror, standard in hospital design, used to prevent cart collisions around corners. The staff mostly ignored it, but that week, something changed. Nurse Felix, overnight shift, reported seeing his own reflection blink out of sync with his real eyes. He laughed it off. Later, he went back and stared again. This time, his reflection smiled, but he didn't. He stopped doing that round after. Back to Glenn. After his second night, he woke up with blood on his pillow, no visible wound. He insisted someone had been in his room, not a nurse, someone from the mirror. "They crawl out when the hall goes dark," he said to Dr. Rina Kashyap, the consulting psychiatrist. "They hate the light. But I left my door open last night. I think it saw me watching." Dr. Kashyap made a note. "Schizoaffective tendencies? Possible delusions manifesting under sleep deprivation." But Glenn wasn't done. "I saw my reflection get up while I stayed in bed," he said. "It just stood there, watching me. Then it turned and walked out of frame." That same night, the Empower flickered at exactly 1:13 a.m. Security footage caught something impossible. In the frame of the hallway mirror, someone was visible, a human shape. But no one was physically there in the hallway. The camera facing the corridor showed nothing. But the mirror? It showed someone walking past room 9A. Their face was blurred, not pixelated but smeared, like a painting melting. Glenn began to deteriorate fast after that. He stopped eating. He lined his bed with torn sheets filled with numbers. He insisted he was being watched through his own eyes. "Not everything you see in mirrors belongs to you," he whispered to Marla during her final check-in. "Some of it is just wearing your face." The hospital staff debated what to do. He wasn't violent, not yet, but he was showing signs of full psychological break. The plan was to move him into psych under strict surveillance, but Glenn disappeared before they could move him. One moment he was in his room, muttering in a fetal position. The next, gone. The cameras glitched, literally, a flicker, and then frame jump, and he was no longer in the room. Panic erupted. They checked stairwells, elevators, the morgue. Nothing. Until Nurse Felix returned to the mirror outside 9A and screamed because Glenn was still there, in the reflection, sitting calmly on his bed, looking straight into the glass. But there was no bed and no Glenn in the real hallway behind him. Security removed the mirror that same night, but it was too late. Nurse Felix went missing 24 hours later. Dr. Kashyap quit without notice and moved out of state. Marla, she hasn't spoken in weeks. She's now a patient. Room 9A remains locked. A paper sign on the door reads simply, "Do not assign. Under repair." But sometimes at 1:13 a.m., staff swear they still hear someone whispering inside. 421. He sees when I blink. The baby in the walls. Dr. Caitlin Rowe wasn't the kind of woman who scared easily. 15 years in pediatrics, countless night shifts, and 3 resuscitations under her belt. Fear was something she had learned to compartmentalize. Until she heard the crying. It started the first night she took over for Dr. Levinson in the abandoned maternity wing. They hadn't used the East Wing since 2007. Budget cuts, a nurse's suicide, a fire in the records room that never made the news. Most of the floor had been sealed off, except for 2 rooms now used for emergency overflow. Caitlin's temporary office was one of them. Her first night there, She was reviewing notes on a newborn's unexplained seizures when the soft, wet, choking sound of a baby crying echoed through the vents. It wasn't coming from the neonatal unit. It was coming from inside the wall. She froze, paused her pen mid-note, waited. The crying stopped. Maybe it was the ductwork. Old pipes, faulty air pressure. Sure, that made sense. Until it came back the next night, louder, closer. This time it wasn't just crying, it was gurgling, followed by 3 unmistakable syllables. Ma, ma. Dr. Rose stood, walked to the wall behind her desk, and pressed her ear to it. The sound cut off, as if it had been listening for her. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning she brought it up jokingly to Lila, the day nurse on her team. "Hey, tell me this old wing isn't haunted." Lila blinked. "Wait, did you hear it too?" Caitlin narrowed her eyes. "You've heard it?" Lila nodded slowly. "Crying baby, right? I thought I was going nuts." "Dr. Levinson heard it too. Said he was requesting a transfer. He left 2 weeks ago without saying goodbye." "Did anyone investigate?" Caitlin asked. "Oh, the usual. Maintenance checked the ducts, nothing. Admin said it's probably acoustics from the NICU, but..." She leaned closer. "There was never a NICU on this floor." That night, Caitlin didn't just stay late. She stayed until 3 a.m., and she brought a baby monitor. She placed the monitor's receiver on the old cot in the corner and walked down the hall with the other unit in hand. She'd only reached the stairwell when static crackled in her palm, followed by the unmistakable sound, soft, wet gasping. Then, through the fuzz, "Help. Mama? Can't breathe?" She bolted back to the room. Nothing. No one. But the receiver was still glowing green, meaning sound was being detected in the room. Her breath hitched. Then she heard a thump from the ceiling. She turned on her phone's flashlight and slowly tilted it upward. Dust swirled as her beam traced across the old ceiling panels. One tile, directly above her desk, was dislodged. Caitlin dragged a chair beneath it, climbed, and pulled the tile aside. At first, all she saw was darkness. Then something white. It caught her light, a porcelain doll, swaddled. Face cracked, eyes black. She reached for it. The second her fingers touched the porcelain cheek, she heard it, a scream, from inside the vent, but it wasn't a baby anymore. It was a woman's voice, guttural, agonized. "Where's my baby?" Caitlin fell off the chair, crashing hard. The doll dropped, hit the floor and split open. Inside the porcelain shell was something that should never be inside a doll. Tiny, desiccated ribs, a real spinal cord, mummified tissue. The doll had been hollowed and filled with human remains. She called hospital security. They dismissed it as weird old junk. The doll was taken to storage. No report filed. Caitlin knew something wasn't right. She returned the next day with a crowbar, alone. She pried open the vent behind her desk and climbed inside. What she found changed everything. There was an old crawl space, likely part of the original 1960s design, where she found a blanket, a child's bonnet, a rusted scalpel, and a journal. The pages were moldy, but some entries were still legible. They belonged to Nurse Evelyn Shaw. Evelyn had worked the East Wing during the late 90s. Her notes grew increasingly erratic. "Baby girl born last night. No records, no. Paperwork said she was stillborn, but I heard her cry. They took her body. Dr. Haller said not to tell anyone, said he'd dispose of it properly. But I saw him bring a doll box to the incinerator. I tried to stop him. He said if I spoke they'd say I was insane. I think he hid her. I hear her sometimes, in the walls, calling me. I'll keep her safe. I'll make her a real resting place. I swear it." Then one final entry. "They say I jumped, but I didn't. I didn't. I would never leave. Her alone. She's cold. She's still crying. She's mine now. I won't go. Evelyn never jumped. Her body had never been recovered. Hospital records claimed suicide. But the stairs were locked that night. Witnesses were vague. One said they Saw her walking into the wall. Caitlin submitted the journal to hospital management. The response? Nothing. No call, no follow-up. But 2 days later, the doll disappeared from storage, and Caitlin began getting voicemails from an unknown number, just crying. And a whisper, "You heard me. You can't leave now." Last week, Dr. Caitlin Rowe was found unconscious in her East Wing office. No physical trauma, no signs of drug use, heart rate abnormally slow. She awoke 48 hours later and hasn't spoken a word since. But visitors say she keeps rocking in her bed and mouthing something silently. If you read her lips, they say, she's still in the wall. Room 421 wasn't on the map. Nate Mitchell didn't believe in ghosts, not until the elevator skipped a floor that didn't exist. It was his first week as night security at St. Sebastian Memorial, and so far it had been mostly dull, a few hallway wanderers, maintenance requests, and tracking down nurses who forgot their key cards. But that Tuesday night, everything changed. At 1:13 a.m., the hospital's south elevator stopped, on the 4th floor. Only thing was, St. Sebastian didn't have a 4th floor. He checked the panel. The buttons read 1235B, standard hospital protocol, no 4, due to superstitious design practices in some countries. And yet, the floor display glowed 4-2. 3 digits. Glitch? The doors slid open. Cold air hit him like a wall. Beyond, the threshold wasn't a floor he recognized. Dim white lights buzzed overhead, walls stained with old handprints. Wheelchairs stacked like bones in the corner. There were no windows, no nurses, no exit signs. Nate took one cautious step forward, flashlight in hand. That's when he heard it, a faint, wheezing sound, like a breath being pulled backward. Then, laughter, but not joyful, not human. It sounded wet, like lungs filled with water. He should have left. But something inside him, a sick curiosity maybe, kept him moving. As he passed what looked like an old patient ward, he saw it. Room 421, the number was barely legible, scratched into the peeling paint of a heavy steel door. Rust bled from the hinges. The window was dark, but he could feel eyes watching him from the other side. He reached for the handle. Cold, sticky. He pulled. It creaked open an inch, then slammed shut from the inside. The entire hallway went dark. Nate stumbled backward, flashlight flickering. A voice echoed behind him. "A woman's, you shouldn't be here." He turned. "No one," the voice came again. "He doesn't like visitors." He backed into the elevator and slammed the close button. The doors creaked, shook, then sealed shut. The panel blinked, going down floor. B. He hit the lobby button. Nothing. The elevator descended. Slower than usual. Grinding, humming. The lights dimmed, then surged. When the doors opened, he wasn't in the basement. He was back in the main lobby, only wrong. The lights were out. The reception desk was covered in sheets, like it hadn't been used in years, and in the corner beneath the clock stood a figure in a blood-stained nurse uniform, head tilted, eyes completely black. Nate screamed. He woke up in bed. He thought it was a nightmare until he found the patient bracelet around his wrist, white plastic, freshly clipped. Name, Nate Mitchell, room 421. He ripped it off and ran. The next night, he reviewed the CCTV footage. His badge gave him limited access, but the hallway feeds from the night before should have been available, except they weren't. Every camera between 1 and 2 a.m. was glitched, flickering static. Then a brief moment of clarity. Footage showed Nate stepping into an elevator, alone, and not coming back out, but the timestamp looped. Over and over, he checked the system log. File corrupted, manual override required. He tried accessing the main terminal in the control room. Denied, but there was a note stuck to the monitor. "She doesn't want to be seen." Handwritten. In his own handwriting. He didn't sleep for 2 nights. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the numbers. 21. 421. 421. He started digging old hospital records. archived blueprints. That's when he discovered something buried, literally. In 1998, a floor was constructed between the 3rd and 5th levels, a restricted psychiatric wing built under the name Project Ward 4. It was shut down the following year after a fire in room 421. Official cause, patient self-immolation. Unofficial notes scrawled in margins said something stranger. Patient claimed mirrors were gateways. Refused to sleep. Said the baby in the vents kept him awake. Last words before the fire, it's not me in the mirror anymore. All of it connected. The crying from the vents, the haunted mirror from room 9A, the ghostly nurse in the forgotten maternity ward. And now, room 421. The next night, Nate got an email. No subject, no sender, just an attachment. A blurry photo of him sleeping at his desk, time-stamped at 1:13 a.m. Problem was, he'd been home that night, alone. He returned to the hospital one last time, brought bolt cutters, flashlights, a crowbar. He needed to see room 421 again. This time, the elevator didn't stop on its own. He forced it, opening the emergency hatch and manually overriding the stop. When the doors creaked open, it was darker than before, silent, but room 421 was still there. Only this time the door was wide open. Inside was a single hospital bed. An old mirror stood at the foot of it. Nate stepped in. He looked into the mirror. His reflection was smiling. He wasn't. The last footage recovered from St. Sebastian shows Nate Mitchell standing alone in a hallway that no longer exists, staring into a mirror that was removed years ago. They found his body slumped in the elevator. Heart stopped. No signs of trauma, but his eyes were missing and scratched into the floor beside him in his own fingernails. 21. It sees you, too. The woman who shouldn't have survived. Danica Rowan was never supposed to wake up. At least, that's what the doctors had told her family after the accident. The van that hit her was going 70. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Her skull had fractured in 2 places. For 3 weeks, she lay in a coma in St. Sebastian Memorial on the 3rd floor, room 307. But on the 22nd night, something happened. She sat bolt upright in bed, eyes wide, lips trembling, and she whispered, "The baby won't stop crying." Nurses rushed in. Her vitals were normal, no signs of brain damage. But Danica was different, detached, hollow-eyed. When her sister came to visit, Danica stared at her like a stranger and said, "Why? Did you leave me in the wall?" At first, doctors blamed the trauma. They said the mind plays tricks during recovery, hallucinations, mental displacement, PTSD, but Danica insisted every night at exactly 1:13 a.m. She heard it. The crying. It came from the air vents. Soft, at first, then louder, angrier, and sometimes, underneath the wails, she could hear something whispering in Latin. One night, the nurses found her standing on the window ledge of her 3rd-floor room, arms spread wide. When asked what she was doing, she said, "I was told to jump. He said he'll let me forget if I jump." After that, she was transferred to room 207, further away from the vents, but it didn't help. Danica stopped sleeping, refused food. She said her mirror had started showing a different version of her, one who didn't blink at the same time, one who grinned while she cried. The mirror was removed. 2 days later, a janitor was found dead in the storage room. Heart failure. His last logged entry was, "Deliver mirror from 207 to basement storage." The mirror was never recovered. Danica's records show her requesting priest visits 5 times. Each request was denied. She wasn't Catholic. That week, a young nurse named Leah Forrester was assigned to Danica's case. Leah was known for her kindness. She sang to her patients, brought them warm tea, even prayed with the ones who asked. But on her 4th night, she stopped showing up. Her phone was found buzzing inside the hospital's south elevator. Its screen displayed a single text message, "She's in 421. Leah had never been assigned to the 4th floor because it didn't exist. When Danica heard about Leia's disappearance, she stopped speaking entirely. Instead, she began drawing, page after page. All the same image, a baby with no eyes, crawling inside a mirror that looked like a hospital room. And behind it, a door with 421 scratched above it, dripping blood. Dr. Amos Crane, the head psychiatrist at St. Sebastian, personally came to evaluate her. His notes were chilling. Patient demonstrates classic possession behavior. Knowledge of events she could not possibly know, physical strength beyond her size, multilingual whispers in her sleep, recorded in Latin and Aramaic, and premonitory sketches. When questioned about room 421, patient responded, "It was never built, but it never left." Security was tightened. Danica was sedated, monitored 24/7, and yet she disappeared. Security footage cut out for exactly 7 minutes. When it returned, her bed was empty. IV torn out. Door still locked from the inside. The only thing left behind was a drawing, taped to the ceiling above her bed. It showed Nate Mitchell, the security guard from Part 4, standing in front of a mirror. Only his reflection was smiling with blood. In its teeth, the hospital launched a quiet internal investigation. That's when they discovered something terrifying. The missing nurse, Leah Forrester. She wasn't missing. Not officially. Her name had been deleted from the hospital's records. Her personnel file, payroll, ID badge, all gone. But a photo in Danica's room showed Leah standing by her bed, smiling, and behind her, in the reflection of the window, was a man with black eyes and a burned uniform. The same nurse from room 9A in Part 1. It all began to click. The baby in the vents. The mirror in room 207, the forbidden room 421, all were pieces of one entity, fragmented, feeding on trauma and grief, an entity that moved through reflections, used sound to lure victims, and lived between floors. Danica hadn't survived. An accident. She'd been marked. In a desperate attempt to cleanse the ward, Dr. Amos ordered the third-floor wing shut down. All mirrors were removed. Patients were relocated, vents were sealed, but the night after the sealing, 6 patients died. One slit their throat with a plastic spoon, another choked on gauze they'd stuffed down their own throat. 2 were found fused to their mattresses, skin melted into the foam. Security footage showed flickering lights and a tall figure moving through the walls. Dr. Amos resigned. Before he left, he scribbled one final note on his office wall. "It feeds on those who've seen it. If you remember, it remembers you." As for Danica, a janitor claimed he saw her weeks later, walking barefoot near the maternity ward. She was humming a lullaby, and trailing behind her was a shadow, not hers. He said she turned and whispered to him, "I gave it my name. Now I'm someone else." She was never seen again. But room 421 reopened the next day, unlisted, undocumented. Security tapes show nurses entering it. None of them ever clocked out, and patients in nearby rooms began reporting the same thing. Crying. From the vents, room 421 was never empty. Alicia Monroe wasn't supposed to come back. She'd promised herself after her daughter died in St. Sebastian Memorial. She would never set foot in that cursed place again. But when she received the voicemail, everything changed. "It's cold, Mommy. Please come get me. Room 421. Her daughter, Mira, had died at birth, 7 years ago. There was no possible way she could be calling now, and yet her voice had echoed from Alicia's phone, not as a call, but as a voicemail left at exactly 1:13 a.m. Alicia had been in therapy. For years, they said the trauma caused delusions, hallucinations. Her grief was making her hear what wasn't there, but Alicia knew her daughter's voice. She'd only heard it once, in a dream, the night after Mira died. And it was exactly the same, that small voice, soft and scared, whispering her name from beyond the wall. She had to go back. She arrived at St. Sebastian Memorial on a rainy Sunday. The outside of the hospital looked the same. Sterile, tired, drained of color. But inside, it was worse. Entire wings were shut down, doors boarded up. The receptionist was gone. No volunteers, no overhead music. It was like walking into a tomb. She told herself she'd just ask questions, maybe talk to the administration, maybe find someone who remembered her case. But the moment she stepped inside, her phone buzzed. Voicemail. She hadn't received a call. She played it on speaker. "You're close." "Mommy, I see you. Don't look in the mirror." Her hands shook. There was no one nearby, but someone had left a hospital bracelet on the floor near the elevator. It read, "Mira Monroe, room 421. Alicia never told the hospital she was coming. No. I knew she was there. But the elevator opened on its own. Inside, a red 4 blinked, even though the 4th floor was never built. Trembling, Alicia stepped in. As the doors closed, she noticed something scrawled on the interior mirror in condensation. "It remembers you." The ride up felt endless. The elevator dinged once and opened to a hallway that shouldn't exist. The walls were wrong, stained, pulsing softly like lungs. The overhead lights flickered in a rhythm, like a heartbeat. There were no signs, no nurses, no wheelchairs, just a long, endless corridor, and at the end, a door. Room 421. Alicia's breath hitched. The door was slightly ajar, creaking as if breathing in the dark. She stepped forward, and the moment she crossed the threshold, the lights died. For a moment all she heard was her own heartbeat, then the crying, low, wet, right above her, crawling through the vents. She turned her phone flashlight on. The room was filled with mirrors, on every wall, on the ceiling, on the floor, all shattered and warped, and in each mirror, a different version of her. Some were screaming, some were smiling, one was bleeding from the mouth, holding a small bundle. "Mira?" Alicia whispered. From one of the mirrors, her daughter looked back. A child, around 6 years old. Pale, sunken eyes, hair matted like she'd been underwater too. Long the girl reached out, through the mirror. "Mommy," she said. Alicia stepped forward, trembling. Then she felt it, breath, on the back of her neck. She turned. Behind her stood the burned nurse, his mouth sewn shut, eyes pouring ash, hands soaked in blood. But it wasn't just him anymore. He was fused with something bigger, a creature stitched from hospital gowns and IV tubes, limbs crawling from vents, faces screaming from its skin. It opened its mouth, and from it came her daughter's voice. "Stay with me, Mommy. We'll never be alone again." Alicia ran, but the mirrors began to bleed. Every reflection screamed. The hallway stretched like it was alive. Doors began appearing and slamming open, each showing other people trapped. A security guard clawing at his own face. A nurse with hollow eyes singing to no one. A woman drawing babies with no eyes on every surface. They were all still here, not dead, absorbed. Alicia finally reached the elevator. It was gone. Only a wall, written across it in blood. "You wanted her back. You don't get to leave." Alicia collapsed, sobbing. Then she remembered the voicemail, her phone. She pulled it out. The screen was cracked, but still on. The voicemail list flickered. There were 7 voicemails now, each from her daughter, each one a memory. Her first breath, her first cry, her first goodbye. Alicia whispered, "I'm sorry I wasn't there," and pressed play. As the final voicemail played, the mirrors cracked inward, not shattering but folding like paper. The crying stopped. The hallway shrank, and in the center of room 421, her daughter stood, real, whole. "Mira?" Alicia said. The girl nodded. She held out her hand. Alicia stepped forward, but before she could touch her, the girl whispered, "You came. So now you can go." Then the world folded inside out. Alicia woke up in a hospital bed, sunlight outside, beeping machines, nurses chatting. She blinked. She was on the 3rd floor, room 307. She reached for her phone. "No voicemails?" she asked. The nurse, what day it was. They told her she had collapsed at the entrance, severe dehydration. No one had seen her go to any other floor. She was discharged 2 days later. When she got home, she found something under her pillow, a hospital bracelet, Mira Monroe, room 421. No blood, no scratches, just clean plastic. But her phone buzzed. Voicemail. She played it. "Thank you for coming, Mummy. You kept your promise." She dropped the phone and smiled through tears. Epilogue. 2 months later, demolition began on the abandoned south wing of St. Sebastian Memorial. During excavation, workers broke through a sealed wall between floors 3 and 5. Inside was a single room, fully intact, coated in mirrors, with a rusted number plate. 21. The room was empty, except for one thing, a stuffed rabbit soaked in dried blood. Its tag read, "Property of Mira Monroe." As the crew chief reached down to pick it up, he heard a baby crying from the vents. The end.